Okay. Thank you. That was really great. And I think a lot of what Dario says and what I have to say sort of they dovetail well with each other. He had asked who is in sciences and who is in humanities, so I wanted to ask who has families and who doesn't have families. So anybody here with partners or children? Okay, good. I tried to word my presentation in a way that it would be useful for you, even if you don't have partners or children. But we'll see if it's useful for you or not. I have two caveats at the beginning here. The first was that there was another woman who was going to be giving the talk named Afra, who I'm drawing most of my ideas from, actually. And I wanted to say that talking about combining work and family as a male and as a female are two very different things, I think. We want to live in a very, what's the word I'm looking for, equal society. We don't live in an equal society, unfortunately. Hopefully, people who do have partners have understanding partners who are helpful and stuff. But Afra is probably better qualified to talk about, from a woman's perspective, how to balance life and work. So I say what I say today with a little bit of understanding that actually, although I do a lot of work in my family, or I like to think that I do a lot of work in my family, actually my wife does a lot more work than I do. And so I want to recognize that at the beginning. And to that point, I told my wife yesterday I was giving this talk, and what did she think about it? She laughed, and she said, "Is this something they asked you to do?" And I said, well, yeah, I thought I might have something to share, and so anyway, we'll see if it's useful or not. But first, what I really want to talk about today, rather than talking about sort of the how to balance life and family, or to give you these easy pointers, I want to kind of talk about what success is, and then I want to talk about how to succeed. But I think the ideas about what success is are probably more important for us to get our minds around, so we can decide what it is that we need to do to succeed. So the same as Dario, rather than giving you this 5-step process, if you do this, 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 and this, then you'll be successful. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist, and I can't give it to you. Instead, what I want to talk about is sort of the principles that I use to balance my study, my work, and my family, and then tell you sort of how I do it, and then give you some suggestions about things that I don't do but might be useful to you. But ultimately, it's about you working it out for yourself. So my wife said, she laughed when I said this, whether or not I have any credentials for balancing life and family. In 2006 and 2007, I met my wife. This is a picture of me and my wife. Well, it seems like a long time ago. That's almost 6 years ago now. But we got married, and we had our first daughter. That's Naomi there. She wasn't that big when I finished my first degree, but I had done a Master of Arts at the University of Birmingham through their distance program as I was living in Japan. So this was my first success. 5 days before we came to the UK, we found out we were pregnant with our second daughter. This is May. She also was not as big when she was born, but I did manage to finish my Master of Research in time for that. And in 2011, on or about June 26th, we will be having another baby, hopefully. This is tentatively, you don't really know at this point, but this is tentatively Mia. She's a little girl, tentatively. We aren't absolutely sure, but there's a question mark whether or not I haven't finished my PhD yet, so hopefully this will end in success as well. So I have had a little bit of experience. And not only have I had some experience, but sort of my ideas of what success is have changed over the last couple of years. In October 2008, this is when we had just moved to the UK, and we found out that my wife was pregnant, and it's really hard to move to another country and to find out that you're pregnant and to try to put your life together. I had two goals. The first one was to finish my PhD, which seemed like a good goal, but the second one, as far as my family went, was not get divorced, which you laugh at, but I was sort of thinking to myself, this is kind of the baseline for what we need to get through this. That was how I was thinking about it. I didn't actually think that my wife and I were going to end up getting divorced. It was going to be failure. But in my mind, I thought, okay, this is what I need to we just need to make it through this time. Luckily, things have changed. It's now May of 2011. I still have that first goal, which is to finish my PhD, and I think things are progressing in a way that hopefully that will happen in the next year and a half. But I'm also become more interested, instead of just not getting divorced, I'm interested in having a strong family and living a healthy, balanced, and I put balanced with a question mark because I'm not quite sure what that means exactly, what it means to live a balanced life. But this is sort of what my goal is now. It's changed a little bit. I've also put the word healthy throughout this talk a couple of times. I do mean emotionally healthy, but I also mean physically healthy as well, too. I think this is an important thing that we need to keep in mind. I really love that Dario did an Ironman. I mean, that's fabulous. Staying healthy is really, really important. It really helps your mindset about these sorts of things. So something happened between 2008 and 2011, and basically this is sort of what I realized about life. There's three principles that I have sort of come to understand, really. And these are the ones that I want to share with you. This is sort of what I'm basing it on. Let's talk about the first one. The first one is that it's never a good time to do any of these things, okay? For those of you who have families, you know that having a family, it's hard. You can think that maybe it'll be a good time to get married in 3 years when I don't have whatever it is that's holding you back now. I've put in here, it's never a good time to get married, to have a family, to do a PhD, and these two are my personal ones from this last year was to have another baby and to take the kids to Istanbul, which I'll talk about at the end of the talk. But my wife and I did have this talk last year as we were discussing, well, should we have a third child or not? And my wife had really, really wanted to have a third child, and I was like, I'm doing the PhD and it's busy and we don't have any money and all these sorts of things. But as I was doing sort of the maths in my head of what did I need to make it happen so that it would be okay to have a third child? Well, it was actually never going to get to a time where it was going to be easy and we were going to have enough money in my mind. It was never going to be a good time to do any of those things. So the change in my mind was it's always as good a time as any to do anything. And I have a picture of I think it's Fred Astaire. Is this Singing in the Rain? Or dancing? Is it Dancing in the Rain, Singing in the Rain? The idea is that it's not a great time to go out and dance and sing when it's raining. But actually when you go out and dance and sing when it's raining, you have this wonderful experience of doing something that's can be quite, what's the word I'm looking for? Serendipitous? So the point is that if you're thinking about planning my life, I'm going to plan my life in this way, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, I don't know if it's ever going to be a good time to do what you need to do. So, point number 2 then is happiness based on circumstances results in very limited happiness. So if you decide, well, if I have this much money, I'll be happy, or if I live in this place, I'll be happy, or if I'm married to this person, I'll be happy. All these sorts of things, you end up being very limited by how much happiness you can attain. Because the thing that I guess I realized in the last 3 years, last 4 years, is that the next thing isn't the best thing. The next thing has another next thing in front of it, and it just keeps going and going and going and going. You never get to a point where you have everything you want. So your circumstances are never going to be perfect for you. So you have to make sure that your happiness is coming from someplace else rather than from what your circumstances are. And the point is also that things are not necessarily going to get easier or less complicated. So you're doing your PhD now. It's a very difficult, complicated time. It's not going to get easier or less complicated necessarily, especially when you put kids and families into the mix. I was so happy. We got my second daughter almost out of diapers now. Or out of nappies. Sorry, my American English there. And we got her out of nappies. I thought, oh, this is really going to make things easier. But it's just a whole new set of problems because now she talks, so she can complain about things and say no. And so I start thinking back, well, it was easier actually when she was in nappies and she didn't talk because you could just tell her what to do. So Anyway, the point of all this is instead of thinking I need to get through my PhD, my goal is to get through my PhD, I think it's better to focus on the process of growth and happiness in your life. And a PhD is just the place that you are in your life right now. Okay? Okay, that's sort of the esoteric kind of philosophical stuff. Here, sort of what works for me in planning my my life and my family. It's great that Dario spoke first, and I'm going to speak now because we have both very, very different ways of doing it. And that's a really important thing to remember, because what works for Dario and what works for me are two different things. His isn't right, and mine isn't right. It's just different things for different people. For me, dynamic priorities are really, really important. Okay, so I think we all would say, those of us who have families or partners, my family and my partner is the most important thing to me in my life, right? That's true. Your family should be the most important thing to you. But that doesn't actually help you solve the problem of, at 2 o'clock, I have two different commitments that I have to make a choice between, right? Because your family may be more important to you ultimately, but you have to weigh the balance of at any given time, what's more important for me to do? Is it to work on my PhD, or is it to help my daughter with whatever she needs help with? So for me, what that means is that sometimes study takes precedence, sometimes family does, and I have to be wise about when to make those decisions, right? You don't want to choose school when your family needs you, really needs you, and you don't want to invest time and energy in things that you don't necessarily need to be at or need to be doing when you could be working on your school. You need to be wise about making those choices. It needs to be dynamic. I'm completely different than Dario. I have a flexible but organized schedule. So for me, I work whenever I can. And with kids, as for those of you who have kids, you know that you can't block your time off because the baby's throwing up now, and you have to attend to that, and you can't do what you were planning on doing. So for me, that means working in the morning, in the evening, on Saturday, on Sunday, whenever I find a block of time. So I can't set off the time, but if I do find time to work, I work. But at the same time, I try to make other important things like GP appointments and children's events and car boot sales. It's been difficult with my wife having to go to the midwife now every 2 weeks. It's an important meeting that I have to make happen every 2 weeks. We have to go to the midwife together. But we talk about precedence. That has to take precedence over the work. So I have to shift my schedule then to do some work at night after the kids go to bed around 8, or on Saturday mornings or on Sunday, whenever I have time. And I think most importantly, I try to balance then. So as my schedule is dynamic, hopefully I'm not spending too much time working or too much time with your family. But again, it's a very difficult thing to do. And so when it doesn't happen for a day or a week, hopefully not for a month, but when it is out of balance, I try to think to myself, okay, it's out of balance. I have to work my way back into getting more balanced, but I don't worry too much about it. The tools that I use to keep organized, Google Calendar is great. My wife and I have the same calendar, so she puts something on, I put something on it. We can both see where we are, what needs to be done. I also keep a blog. Dario had suggested keeping a blog. I think this is really good, not just for your research, but I blog about things that I'm thinking about, my family life. This is a really good way to tell when you go to write a blog entry about how balanced your life is, what sort of things you're writing about. It also helps you to look back on the last year and see how you've developed both academically and maybe emotionally, or as your family as well. And then I have a moleskin as well. This is one of them to keep my personal and private thoughts, and also lists and things. But this is a private record. So the blog is a kind of public record, and the moleskin is kind of a private record. But how about for you? What might work for you rather than for me? What might be different? I think I've already said this, but the point here is that depending on who you are, you can have a different set of ways of doing things. So, for example, something you might try is child care exchange with friends. So if you have friends who have kids of the same age as you, you might take their kids for 2 hours on Friday night, and then the next Friday night they take your kids for 2 hours, and you can instead of having to spend money then on a babysitter, you can do this sort of thing. Regular sleep might also be important for you. For me, it's not. It's been a while since I've had regular sleep, and I've just sort of adapted to that. But if you're finding yourself really, really tired all the time, regular sleep could be a big factor in what you're struggling with. Fixed schedule. Dario's a good example of this. Maybe you do need to fix your schedule. If you don't fix your schedule, it doesn't work for you. It's another thing to consider depending on who you are, what kind of person you are. But I do agree with your point about if you sit down to write, don't have Facebook open while you're writing. I mean, you won't get your writing done. Shut everything down, work only on your writing, and then spend other time doing things like Facebook or eating a chocolate bar. Deadlines are also really useful for some people. You have to say, okay, by this time I'm gonna do this. You can set those in the short term, like you suggested, or in the medium term. We'll do a little bit of work on that in a couple of minutes. Extended family support. I don't know if anybody has family in this country, but if you do have extended family support, that can be really helpful. I have a colleague whose mother actually moved here to live with her and her partner and their daughter to help with the child care. If that's a possibility for you, it's something to think about. For me and my family, unfortunately, we don't have anybody in this country. It's only us, and I imagine for the other international students it can be difficult. But if you're able to get extended family support, it's a useful thing. Talking to your supervisor about family issues can be a good thing. Again, my supervisors don't. This is not something that we tend to talk about very much, but it can be a useful thing for you to talk about with your supervisors, especially if there's a big problem. You will want to bring it up with them. And also setting deadlines. You might want to set tangible, regular goals as well too. Say, okay, by the end of this month, I'm going to complete this part of my writing, or I'm going to complete this part of my research. Setting those goals is really, really important for staying on track. So the point is, set your priorities first. What's most important to you? Try new things whenever something isn't working or your schedule is out of balance or something. Maybe you need to try something new. Certainly worth thinking about. Consult with your colleagues, see what other people are doing, and think about how you might adapt some of their methods. But most importantly, choose to be happy. So regardless of how stressful things are at home or how stressful things are at work, you really have to make a choice, a conscious choice to say, I'm going to be happy despite my circumstances. And I think if you can do that, it'll make the rest of this a lot easier. So I said it was never really a good time to go to Istanbul. My wife really wanted to go to Istanbul while we were in Europe. And she's 6 months pregnant. We've got these 2 kids. We don't have any money. I'm thinking, why in the world would we do this? This is the worst possible time to do this. But we decided to give it a try, to give it a go, and to see what happens. I said the trip wasn't perfect, but we did get some really good pictures here and there. I think the point is that if you can take the opportunity to go, you should go. And remember that if you're going to be in this PhD for 3 years or for 4 years for some of us, if you've done the Master of Research as well, it's really important to not say, I'm going to put my life on hold until I finish this. Because you wake up, you'll be 4 years older, your kids will be 4 years older, and that time is gone. You don't get it back. So if you get a chance, do the things that you want to do as well. And try to keep balanced as much as you can. So I also have my email address here as well if you have any questions. I think that's it. So thank you very much. And I think